Hello and welcome to today's virtual tour. I'm Kristina, this is Cassidy. We're here at the Missouri Botanical Garden. After a long break from virtual tours, we're here inside the new Jack C. Taylor Visitor Center to show you the new space. So we'll also be walking through the garden today as usual to show you some of the beginnings of fall color and a few things that are still in bloom. So stick around and we'll take a walk through the garden with you today. So we're here in the William T. Kemper lobby of the new Jack C. Taylor Visitor Center, where you can see some of the beautiful new design features of this new space. So one thing that is really neat about this space, if we look down, is actually the new floors. So these are river stones that have been placed in the concrete and sanded down into the floor. And then you'll see these gold designs of leaves from different trees. And each of these is a type of tree that is native to Missouri.
Yeah, I see sycamore, tulip tree, there's sassafras. There's actually a sort of a finder's key on the wall in here if you're in here and curious what some of these leaves might be. I also see buckeye and sweet gum. And as we're looking at the floor, in addition to the leaves and river stones, you start to notice the sort of playful shade that is here in the center of this space, and that is created by this installation here in the atrium of the lobby, where these panels, there's something like 84 panels that are in this space, and they cast this this unique shade on the floor that's meant to mimic dappled sunlight coming through the leaves and limbs of trees. So it's you can sort of get a sense for that in this view by looking at the installation itself, and then you sort of see it manifest on the floor in the shadow. I should also mention that we are recording this tour on a Monday, so the garden is closed, which is the reason that we are able to be in this space without having visitors passing through as we're showing it off to you. But it also means some of the spaces that you might be interested in coming to see are spaces we'll kind of skip over a little bit on this tour, which include the new Garden Gate Shop and Sassafras Cafe and Restaurant. So those are closed today, but open when we're open for our regular visiting hours. If you hear the music going in the background, that is the accompaniment to this this big screen over here, this video wall that actually Kristina and I did some work that is featured here. Some of our video work is part of this, and it's a really great way to visualize some of the events and mission work. Right now we're seeing some images from Best of Missouri Market, which is coming up this weekend. So very appropriate that's what we're seeing here. Makes me hungry. So just some of the features here, and I think we're planning to do another tour where we show off the space on a day that it's all open and give you a better look.
But this is just a preview, a little taste of the space, what you can expect to see when you come to the garden next.
Yeah.
And you'll see, different from the Ridgeway Visitor Center, when you arrive in this new visitor center, you enter and you can go straight out to the garden. So we'll walk out here where Now these beds aren't planted yet. They'll be planted in fall and spring, which is the best time to do planting. But you'll be able to walk right out here to these new beds, straight into the garden, so you can imagine how beautiful that view is going to be as soon as you walk in the front doors.
Yeah, that is one of the things that is different in this new space, and I think one of my favorite features is how much glass there is that sort of is that sort of brings the garden inside, because you're able to see so much of it from inside to see out.
And that was a big goal with the new Jack C. Taylor Visitor Center, to bring the outside in, and that's why you see not only all the glass that allows you to look out on the beautiful garden, but those features like that dappled shade and the leaves featured in the floor that kind of, bring the outdoors in. And then as soon as you walk out here, this is kind of a cool new feature of the new design of these gardens. You'll notice that you're surrounded by our new conservatory, which also is still being planted, not quite open yet, as well as the climatron, the temperate house, the temperate house is under renovation, but the climatron is open. And then right here to your left is the Linnaean House. So kind of immediately presented with all these options of conservatories to go to before you even walk into the garden. You can see how that glass greenhouse look is reflected by the new visitor center as well. But I was struck by that when I walked out into this space, just realizing how close all these conservatories are, which will be a really nice feature in wintertime. When you come to visit the garden, you can enjoy tropics, the Mediterranean, the orangery that is featured in the Linnaean House, all within a really short walk, not having to face the brutal cold too much. So that's really nice.
Yeah, and it's a really nice tour of garden history as well. The Linnaean House here, the brick greenhouse, is original to the garden, dating back into the mid-1800s, and so this gives you a sense of what the garden would have been like when it first opened. And then you have obviously the mid-century architectural marvel that is the climatron, gleaming in the sunlight over here, and then bringing it back to the new conservatory and the new visitor center. And so you really get this sort of journey through garden history, almost 200 years of garden history, just by virtue of sort of standing in this spot.
In fact, why don't we peek inside the Linnaean House, because that's reopened now after having been closed for a while and then having been mostly empty for a while. So quite a few potted plants, including a lot of citrus, have been moved into this space. Actually, I want to point out, you'll also notice, very exciting, the Linnaean House is now accessible. There used to be a step up into it, but that has been adjusted so that everyone can enter the space easily now. And so we're starting to move some potted plants into this space. That term I used earlier, orangery, is historically accurate to what this type of building would have been used for at the time it was built. So it features a lot of citrus and other potted plants from warmer climates as well.
And actually, one of the things that will greet us is right in front here, is a good reminder for folks, if you've been coming through our temporary visitor center entrance over the last year or so, year and a half or so, that space is now closed. It's undergoing its final transformation to become the Bayer Event Center, and so that is underway, and this part of the garden is closed, but there is access now here to the Linnaean House, and there's actually a lot of work that will still be going on here in terms of collection work. So as Kristina was talking about the oranges and citruses, there are additional plans to include other fruits and some wild species relatives of fruits that we know, like strawberries, some historically important cultivars of grapes. So there's it's a really well laid out and nice green space, and but it is still part of the transformation of the collections in here. That things will shuffle around a little bit, but it is open at the moment, and on a day like today is really nice. It's not too hot in here, and just some really great things on display. But this is the way that most people for the last year or so, those who have been able to visit us in person, have been coming through the temporary visitors center and through the Linnaean House, and then out into the garden through the rose garden. So now your entrance will be through the main visitor center, the Jack C. Taylor Visitor Center, and then you have access here. And you can kind of see the sight lines that were part of this planning process the whole time. So we're actually standing on top of what will return to being one of the water pools in this axis, with these lovely plantings here, and now new beds and the fountain complete the axis all the way to the new tram shelter. So we hope that everybody is as excited as we are for the journey that is ongoing to get these things planted out and filled in. And as Kristina mentioned earlier, those are things that will be happening sort of between now and into the spring of next year.
The new conservatory, though, will be opening sometime before the end of the year. That's where the holiday show will be taking place, as well as the orchid show. So that is the new space where those shows will be happening. Now, as we're walking away from kind of the new spaces, we're entering an old favorite, the rose garden, which looks absolutely beautiful. Something that we've mentioned before on our tours is that roses kind of have a second peak in early fall when the weather is mild. They're capable of flowering all year, but here in St. Louis, where the summers are very hot, they tend to not do so well in the middle of summer, but they thrive in early spring and early fall. And this rose right here, pro tip for anyone who's watching this tour, this is one of the best smelling roses in the rose garden.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's like kind of lemony almost.
This is the type of rose I feel like you could make like a rose jam from. It's so fragrant. So it's kind of on your right as you're walking, no, on your left if you're walking into the rose garden from the front. This pink one here called...
I don't know if this is the sign. If this is the
Yeah.
sign for this one.
So this is what you're looking for if you want to smell a great rose.
And Matthew Norman, who is the garden rosarian, does an absolutely fantastic job with this space and with the Lehman Rose Garden. It's a little bit further to our south, but he does a wonderful job and is super knowledgeable. And as Kristina was mentioning, some of the climactic conditions that make it difficult for roses to thrive here year-round, the fact that he's able to keep these plants so healthy and looking so good is a testament to his skill. So shout out to Matthew for keeping this garden looking great as always, and definitely a good time of year, as well as sort of mid to late spring are the two times a year when the roses are really thriving.
So as we mentioned, it's Best of Missouri Market coming up this weekend, but the garden is also open all week. So feel free to come visit during the week to catch these blooms, or better yet, get your ticket to Best of Missouri Market. The whole garden will be open during the market, but you do need a ticket to Best of Missouri Market to get into the garden. But you can enjoy all of the food and drink and crafts that the market has to offer, and then take a lovely walk around the garden here. So you may notice as we're coming up to the central axis here, the pools are empty. The water lilies were just taken out this morning. As the weather is going to start to get cooler, those water lilies are not going to be very happy. So they were taken out by our horticulturists, and a few things are going to start coming out in the next few weeks in the way of summer annuals as the weather cools off. But as that's happening, the fall color is going to start showing off as well. So we're kind of in a transitioning phase right now, but it's very beautiful because we're getting the beginnings of fall color, the ends of sort of the color that comes from blooms and tropical annuals. So it's a great time to visit even as things kind of change over.
And I've even spotted a few Christmas lights if you look close enough. So we're,
Yes.
as much as we will pause and appreciate the beauty of the fall color as it presents itself to us over the next month, we are in full swing getting ready for events like Garden Glow, which starts in mid-November. The specific date escapes me, but
you can find it online, mobot.org/glow. You can find all the information about Garden Glow coming up here in mid-November. So really only a little over a month away.
As we pause here to look down the axis, one of the things that struck me, in addition to the cooler temperatures, which aren't great for the water lily collection, because the sun is actually lower in the sky, there's more shade on these pools, so that it's not just sort of the ambient temperature, but it's the fact that they're more shaded. And so I noticed while the lilies were still in the pools last week that the day blooming lilies weren't necessarily getting that cue from the sun to be open. So there's a little bit of, it's not just temperature but also light, and those are two big factors that play into so many things that our plants do, including fall color. The shorter daylight, the cooler temperatures, those are the things that are triggering our tropical annuals and sun and heat-loving native plants to sort of shut down and get ready for the winter, but it's also triggering that change in the foliage that we all know is fall color, triggered by the amount of light that they're getting and the temperatures.
You can even tell as we're walking around just that the trees that haven't changed color yet aren't quite that deep green anymore. They're a dustier green. We were just talking about this right before we started our tour this morning, and it might not come through super well on the camera here, but I think you can even tell already, even in these cypress trees, which will turn a really beautiful copper color as the season gets a little bit colder.
Yeah, and if you look really close at some of the ginkgos as well, which there are a few ginkgos near us, and they're a big feature throughout the garden landscape, you'll just you'll start to see over the next couple of weeks there'll be a little bit of yellow that sneaks in to some of the leaves, and that's always one of the really the showier parts of the fall color display is when the ginkgos turn that bright yellow, and they hold onto their leaves just long enough before dropping them all at once. And while green is still the dominant color, we are seeing some signs of that changeover. I mean, this is, it's not that we're at a point where there's an absence of fall color, it's just sort of the beginnings. Much in the way in the spring where we see things like crocus come up first that are sort of the harbinger of things to come. We're seeing some of those same processes signal the start of fall with some of the plants that are already changing color.
You can see walking through the daylily garden here that just another sign of seasons changing. I think the last time we did a tour, the daylily garden was blooming and we were showing that off, if I remember right.
It has. We took a nice long summer break, feel refreshed. Definitely a lot fewer daylilies than the last time that we walked through, although and maybe my eyes are playing tricks on me. I feel like I see one.
I bet it's one of the autumn ones. You know, some of the hybrids are bred to bloom late. And some of them are named accordingly.
Yeah, always a little surprise here.
So this one is called How Sweet You Are. And it seems to be possibly the last daylily blooming.
It's certainly
or
the
one
only
of the
one
last.
that's blooming right now. I know we had a big daylily sale, I guess that was about 6 weeks ago. Hopefully you took part in that and brought home a daylily for yourself. But most of these daylilies have been sort of thinned out and prepped to be ready to grow and show off again next summer. But it was nice to see one still hanging out.
Yes.
Now if you turn to your right, Kristina, as we look kind of back down the knolls, you can see a little bit of fall color. I don't actually know what type of tree this is, but it was notable to me that you can sort of see little patches of yellow start to come in, and this area in particular gets really showy with yellow color in the fall because of some hybrid hickories that we have in this landscape, as well as this Amur cork tree over here next to the Statue of Victory. So there are a lot of trees that that turn really bright yellow, and actually even the ginkgo that we're standing under as well. So you know, I think sometimes people think of fall color as oranges and reds and deep dark scarlets and coppers and things like that, but yellow is actually a really prominent color, and this is a particular vista that showcases that once those colors do start to change.
Up ahead here we have a tree that's always one of the early changers each year, dogwood. And we'll get close up and see, so you can tell how much this one is definitely changing.
maybe if we come around this way.
You can see the color a little
Yeah,
better
we're
over here.
we're
with
playing
the light.
with we're playing with the light a little bit. So you've got the color, and then even here you see a few little fruits. Yeah, it's a little bit easier to see it from here, but these dogwoods here in front of the Sax Museum are always some of the first to change color here at the garden in fall.
So it has begun, and we'll be posting updates throughout the fall season on our social media to let you know what is changing and what to look for while you're here.
And actually, if we head a little bit further into the garden, there is one more tree that's another one of those sort of early changers, and we'll showcase that just a little bit. And that is the sassafras that is here in the mausoleum garden. So these sassafras here, this grove, has been here since before the garden was founded. So historic to this area when it would have been sort of open prairie.
And actually, you can also see some color already coming in. I believe this is a type of sumac here.
Yeah.
Speaking of sumac, that reminds me to give a shout out to Shaw Nature Reserve, where I was just last week. They're already starting to have some fall color change out there, including a lot of the sumac and the prairies. It's just very beautiful out there right now as the prairie grasses kind of fade to a really nice bronzes and burgundies. The sumac starting to come in the grass. It's a great time to go for a hike while the weather is so nice and mild too.
Yeah, and even from here you can see what I was sort of alluding to without necessarily needing to get real close to it. You can see the pops of color, the reds, up above this layer of sumac. Those are the sassafras that are starting to change color, and so we're getting there. You know, I personally am just going to enjoy every beautiful, crisp, not too cool, not too hot fall day that we get, and enjoy the progression of colors as we see them both here in the garden and then out in the St. Louis community, where I think a lot of people's street trees are also changing or beginning to change color right now. But I will mention that we anticipate peak fall color at the garden to still be almost a month away. Our peak is typically the last week of October or first week of November. And as Kristina was mentioning, we'll share all that, those progress updates as we get closer and closer to the peak.
So in the meantime, while we're waiting for that peak to come around, stay tuned for updates. We'll certainly try to do another virtual tour when fall color is really looking good. And we hope you can visit in the meantime. Check out Best of Missouri Market this weekend. And until then, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.